What is the quickest way you've seen someone *k their life up? New kid gets hired. 18, just started college, good looking, well dressed, whole 9 yards. First week on the job steals $2,000. Doesn't even do it smartly. Just loads up some cards and hands them to a friend, directly in front of a camera. 2 years later we still can't figure it out. Steals just enough to make it a felony, right after turning 18, and in the dumbest way possible. It's like he intentionally wanted to screw up his life. Cousin broke up with his GF, but not before getting her pregnant. He proceeded to hook up with 2 more women. He now has 3 children, all with birthdays in the same week. Knew a kid in high school who pretended to be one of the prettier girls in school and texted this desperate geek asking him for naked pictures. He then proceeded to send the pictures around to everyone at school. He's still in the sex offenders registry for distributing child pornography. Removed. Someone I know drove drunk because it was only a few blocks. Killed 3 people and is now in prison for 20 years. Friend's birthday. Got super drunk. His friend offered him a ride home when he wanted to leave. He ghosted. No one knew where he went. He drove home. Or tried to. Hit a tree on a road with a speed limit of 30. Police said he must have been going 70. They think he passed out. He's not smart anymore. He's Forrest Gump now. Which means he's still smart enough to know he's dumb, and remember what life used to be like. He can walk, but he'll never play sports. He gets upset when he forgets names. He's never going to be independent, and he knows it. He's attempted suicide at least once since the accident. Don't drink and drive. I didn't personally see it. But about 8 years ago some friends in my social circle were at a party, and some drunk dude had a gun and decided he wanted to play Russian roulette. He pulled the trigger and shot himself in the head. His family packaged it like a suicide, but there were plenty of witnesses. Guy from my country, third world, was studying here in the US. A big privilege and usually takes a lot of effort and money. For some reason while in Miami he tried to steal a plane. Right off the tarmac. The news says he was troubled. I prefer the word idiot. My bill. She said she was on birth control, and I didn't really believe her, but I wanted to get laid, you know? Their baby is very cute. Not just theirs but the lives of their kids. Drove drunk with 8 unseat belted kids in one SUV, rolled the vehicle, killed 2 of the kids, both her own, and seriously injured 2 others, one also hers. Obviously lost custody of her remaining 2 children and is spending the next 30 or so years in prison. To this day, she shows zero remorse and continues to insist it wasn't her fault. That piece of shit. Those boys were treasures. A developer at my job, here on a work visa from India, was hitting on the young Latina cleaning lady, asked her to come to a hotel with her, and then whipped his dick out. Did this at the office under cameras. She pressed charges, and he is being deported back to India, losing his job making 6 figures. Solid way to fuck up your life in a matter of seconds. Removed. Friend of mine decided to pay for an apartment for him, his father, stepmother, step-sibling, and mother. All under the same roof. None of them worked. Someone in my family was going to be a great professional hockey player. He was young and already in the junior league and so close of being recruited by the NHL. He was working out every day to be in the best shape possible. Then he was caught stealing from the other players in the locker room. He got beat up and then kicked out of the league. Apparently he had been stealing for a while. He was lucky that nobody pressed charges against him. His career ended that day. His bad reputation followed him everywhere and no other team wanted him anymore. What a fucking idiot. Worked with a guy who inherited a few $1 million, a successful business and a livestock farm after his grandfather passed away. It all went up his nose within a year. Don't be fooled, cocaine is a nasty drug. Edit going to add some more to this, clarify some things. I am pretty sure cocaine was not 100% at fault. I wouldn't doubt if he was doing more than coke. He was obviously not good at handling money. He bought a bunch of big toys, new truck, jet skis, 4-wheelers, things like that. He started partying more and taking care of responsibilities less. The new toys disappeared, farm went up for sale, but he was still partying and doing drugs. After a while that all adds up. I saw him a little over a year after he quit working with us. He was living with one of my coworkers, looked like he had lost about 50 pounds and was driving an old junker truck. Was at a University of North Dakota hockey game. There was a moment of silence for the opposing team's coach because he lost a family member, if I remember that correctly. Some idiot kid decides this is a good time to yell, "Fuck her right in the pussy." He was publicly vilified for the rest of the year. Popular, fit, good-looking guy dating a hot rich girl in our college. He went out to buy pot in a bad neighborhood. It was a robbery set up. He got shot in the head as they fled the robber-dealer. He survived, but lost his vision and wore a glass eye. School paid for the next semester's tuition, but he was all kinds of emotionally wrecked. He dropped out of college and works for a landscaping company now. The state this happened in has since legalized recreational marijuana. My brother was a felon at age 18, distribution plus firearm. In and out of prison, jail for 15 years. Age 33 he has a complete turnaround. Does the church thing, becomes a contractor, making like $150K a year his first 3 years. His wife and he get in an argument, she leaves, he gets pissed and buy a bottle of tequila. His neighbor comes over to check on him, as he is now in his basement firing his, illegally obtained and owned, AR-15 at photos and trinkets etc. Well, the neighbor called the cops. Brother ends up in a standoff with them for a few hours. Now he is looking at a plea bargain of 8 years. Removed. Way back when they didn't have urinalysis testing in the Navy or any branch of service. That changed in 1982 shortly after I re-enlisted. I quit smoking weed. We were warned of the probable consequences if we got caught after the first Navy-wide test. One of my friends, a shipmate who worked directly for me, decided to not take heed because he only had less than 3 months left before his enlistment was over. He was caught on the next one and was given 45 days restriction and extra duty, loss of half a month's pay for 2 months and reduction in rank. Fuck them, I remember him saying as he smoked a joint on the pier 30 days later after he found out he had to take another urinalysis the next day. Instead of doing his last 2 months then getting his honorable discharge, he was out 2 weeks later with a bad conduct because he told the captain to suck his dick and threw a punch. He was given a choice. Take the BCD or go before a court-martial, then off to Leavenworth for a couple years. Screwed up this life. My brother got a tattoo on his neck of a Mudvayne album cover. A guy the first used to work with told me his story when I asked him why he never drove in. One night, he and his buddies got loaded at a club. As they're walking out, he noticed that there was a limo sitting outside with the motor running and no one in sight. So he hops in, and tells his buddies that he's going to joyride it around the block. Unfortunately, he's so blitzed he ended up crashing it into a light pole 100 feet away. Pause and think about the charges that are already amounting. So he gets out and starts to stumble away, at which point the officer who was waiting further up the block to catch potential doers runs down and cuffs his ass. Then he opens the back door and about 8 terrified high school students hop out. Turns out they were on their way back from prom and the limo driver had made the stop to swap drivers, shifts. So, in the space of about 5 minutes, this moron was facing no fewer than 5 felonies, and almost 20 years later still doesn't have a driver's license. Removed. Removed. When I was working as a strip club bouncer a little while back, I witnessed a super childish display of anger that ended very poorly for the guy. Dude was 23, in law school at a local and pretty prestigious university. I knew this because he told us during his extremely vulgar and aggressive rant towards my partner and I. Called in local law enforcement due to the fact that these sorts of dudes tend to get litigious when they don't get their way, and we were planning on issuing a criminal trespass warning so we could have a paper trail in case he ever decided to come back. He starts to walk out the door, screaming loudly at my partner, calling us every name in the book while I trail slightly behind in case it gets physical. He gets to the door as he is walking out, turns, screams a very more obscenities and throws the door shut, hitting my partner square in the forehead with it. He did not see local PD walking up to the door at this time, and they watched the whole thing happen and immediately cuff him up. My partner and I are state-licensed armed security guards. They write him up for felony assaulting a public servant, take him downtown and book him. My partner was subpoenaed and actually went to court to testify. They got him dead to rights on it. Kicked out of law school, lost scholarship he had and had to repay those monies. What was he upset about, you might ask? He had gotten 2 dances from one of the girls, but only wanted to pay for one. I went to high school with this guy in the late 70s and early 80s. In high school he was about 100 pounds overweight and there seemed to be some contest to make up terrible rumors about him. To put it in a nutshell, you didn't want to be this guy in high school. And #X200B. Ran into him 2 years after high school. He had lost a lot of weight and looked to be in great shape. He also told me he got a job as a security guard at a local mall that had just opened. Would run into him on occasion at the mall. He had been promoted to head of mall security after gaining the right training, or taking the right classes, or whatever, and impressing the people who ran the mall. And #X200B. Not long after he was able to buy a really nice house and really nice car, and he married a very pretty girl who worked at one of the stores in the mall. I don't think he was even 25 years old yet, and this was the outskirts of the San Francisco Bay Area and houses were expensive even back then. It was an amazing transformation and he at the time was doing a lot better than those of us with college degrees. And #X200B. A few years later, sometime in mid-December, a couple of the guards under him decided to use a styrofoam ball and a baton to play baseball an hour or so before the mall opened for the day. The guy the first knew in high school was there apparently. The guy swinging the baton lost his grip and it smashed a plate glass window of one of the stores to pieces. The guy the first knew refused to tell management who broke the window. He told me this after the fact, that he was too valuable and too hard to replace so his job was secure. He was wrong. And #X200B. Soon he was out of work and had trouble finding another job because of the way the job at the mall ended. He lost the house, his wife divorced him after a year or so because he stopped even looking for a job. And #X200B. I ran into him 6 or 7 years later and he had put the weight back on. He looked like he did in high school, which in his case was not a good thing. He was working at a gas station at the time, making less than 1/3 what he made as security supervisor at the mall. And #X200B. I don't know what happened to him since.